Imagine getting some friends, an old film camera, and $7,000 that you receive for lending out your body to medical research and making a movie that's a hit. Well, that's what a young Texan did, and his film is opening today in Houston and other cities across the country.
Hello, I'm Marco, and this is The Shadow Focus. And my reasoning behind making this YouTube channel is just to take a personalized look at some of my favorite films, video games, and literature. And so I'm just going to look at it based off my personal experiences and what resonates with me. And what we're talking about today is going to be the 1992 classic El Mariachi by visionary director Robert Rodriguez. And for those of you who've heard or seen this film, what comes to mind first is probably just the budget of this film. This budget was made for a mere $7,000. I mean, this movie, sorry about that, was made for a mere $7,000. And I kind of want to get away from that conversation because most people just say, hey, remember that movie was made so cheaply? Isn't that cool? It is cool. That's a conversation that's been talked about a million times. Now I want to look more at the story structure and, see if there's any themes that I can, put together, and also just, look at the over-the-top action that's in the film while also, comparing it to the real life, horrifying violence that's in Mexico, that's been in Mexico for the last 20 years. So if that's something you're interested in, let's go ahead and get started. The plot structure in this film is quite simple. Pretty much, it's just a classic case of mistaken identity. In the opening segments of the film, there is a bloody feud that's set up between two sides, two warring factions. One side is going to be more street level, a little bit more gritty, led by a hitman who carries his guns in a guitar case. The other side is going to be a little bit more organized, pretty much, ruling a whole town, and it's going to be led by a sheltered mob boss. And what this sheltered mob boss does in the opening moments of the film is sets up, he puts a hit out on a man dressed in black carrying a guitar case. And that's when we're introduced to our main protagonist, who's a young musician who's entering that town looking for work. And he doesn't find work. He finds a bunch of hitmen trying to kill him because they're looking for a man dressed in black carrying a guitar case, which is what he is. So what follows is just a fight for his survival, where in the end, he ends up losing everything. And I mean, that's pretty much the whole story. It's simple, but there's a lot of layers that I'm going to talk about in this video. There are 4 central characters in this film. The most important is going to be El Mariachi himself, who is left nameless throughout the whole film, so I'm just going to refer to him as El from now on. Following that is going to be his only ally and love interest, Domino, who's a hard-as-nails woman that owns a bar in the center of town. Next are going to be our 2 antagonists. That's right, there's 2 antagonists in this film. There's going to be the street-level assassin named Azul, and there's going to be the drug kingpin named Moco. And if you know Spanish, you're going to know that Moco translates literally to booger. So you're probably wondering what kind of drug kingpin will call himself Booger. But, to put things in perspective, there was a point when the man that was the highest on the FBI's most wanted list was called El Chapo, which translates to the shorty. So, we shouldn't judge too harshly. So, right now I'm going to go ahead and talk more in depth about each character. And then after that, we can talk about some themes and then how I feel personally about the violence depicted, seeing as I am a Mexican-American and have family that live in Mexico. So let's get into it. So firstly, I'm going to go ahead and talk about El. El is pretty much just a mysterious guitar player that just wants to be like his father and his father before him, and naively travels between town to town in hopes of finding success in this old way of life. He is extremely innocent, and it's uncanny because, he goes into a bar and doesn't order a beer or a cocktail. He orders a soda. He's a grown man that orders a soda in a bar. And, he's very kind, and he's very humble, and he's very respectful. Even though the people in that town tend to really be disrespectful or literally try to kill him at points. So, he's kind of a fish out of water. It seems like he doesn't belong in this town. And, well, he's a survivor, pretty much living off just tips and, just surviving, hustling. But it's his knack for survival that's going to lead to his downfall eventually. Because whenever he's faced with a loaded gun, he's just really good at reacting. His body reacts and people end up dead. So throughout the film, he gets better and better at killing, right? It is through his kindness, though, that El finds love in the only person that's willing to help him in this godforsaken town. And, well, on both sides of this skirmish, there's a lot of death and there's a lot of destruction. But I feel that the person that loses the most is going to be El Mariachi himself. He loses his hand, his guitar, and the woman he loves. By the end of the film, he's reduced to a shadow of his past self, a ghost. Next, I'm going to talk about Elle's interest, Domino. So Domino is pretty much a self-made woman that isn't your average damsel in distress. She doesn't take shit from anybody. She would actually prefer to die than to, act on behalf of somebody else's will. So, she's tough as nails. And, at first she's actually kind of, I guess you could say aggressive towards El Mariachi. She actually threatens to castrate him if he doesn't, prove that he's actually a musician by playing her little song. And so, she gets stuff done. But I guess she has an eye for a kind heart. So she is able to see through, her original speculation on his real identity to see that he's really a good man. And she's willing to protect him. She's willing to put her life on the line for him. And, to delve a little bit more into Domino's past, it's implied that her and Moko used to be lovers. And the only clue to this is just the fact that Moko's constantly calling her up and, bothering her. He buys her nice things, kind of like he's trying to buy her love. And, is always asking her, hey, did you get my motorcycle? How do you like the bar I bought you? And, she doesn't like him at all. She seems like she's more repulsed by him. So every time he tries to make an advance on her, she totally I guess blows him off. And later on in the film, her and Elle, it's implied that they deeply fall in love, and it's implied that they spent the night together. So later on in the film, when she ends up at Moko's ranch because Azul took her hostage, when Moko finds out that she slept with Elle, he shoots her on the spot, killing her. So next, I'm going to talk about the hitman Azul. So he's pretty much the gritty side of crime in this town. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. So he runs his business with an iron fist, and he's just oozing charisma and oozing confidence. And you can tell just by the way he carries himself, the way he walks, and the way he talks. He's very resourceful. And, if you're his enemy or even related to his enemy, an enemy's employer or something, he'll kill you without remorse. He's just a few steps below a Terminator, though, because, he does seem to have an honor code. He doesn't seem to ever really want to go against women or children. And, he mostly leaves bystanders alone. He's not one of those people that just because you accidentally witnessed a murder, he's not going to go out there and kill you because he knows you have nothing to do with it. So I guess he's a stone cold killer with a heart. So next I'm going to talk about the drug kingpin Moko. He's known by most as Moko, but to a few as Mauricio, because that's his real name. And well, throughout the whole movie, he's shown to have a very short fuse, finding any reason to send his men out to kill people. But the thing is, he never leaves the comfort of his mansion. So he's just used to having everybody do things for him. He doesn't actually get his hands dirty because he knows that if he leaves his mansion, he wouldn't last, because guys like Azul would take him out in a split second. So, I guess at the same time, with all the money and riches that he gets, come the women. So throughout the whole movie, he's surrounded by beautiful women in his mansion, and they're just throwing themselves at him. And he seems to be, he ignores them, he pushes them away. Because I think he has some sort of inferiority complex where the only women he really wants are the ones that don't want him. So that's why throughout the whole movie, he's obsessing over Domino. And I think it's in that inadequacy, to get the woman he actually wants, he has to constantly prove his masculinity. He even goes as far as killing Domino when he finds out that she slept with Elle. And, he goes as far as shooting Azul in the heart just because, it makes him feel cool. Because he knows all his men are right there protecting him, so he can shoot, pretty much he has free will. And, he even goes as far as shooting Elle in the hand when Elle confronts Moko, just to mess with him, because he knows he's a guitar player, so he wants to take away his ability to play guitar. So when Elle is on the floor holding his hand that's split open because of the bullet, Moko is just laughing maniacally, like an idiot. And instead of looking at the ground where he should have been, he's just tilting his head back and laughing. And while he's doing that, El Mariachi actually crawls and picks up Azul's gun and shoots Moko 3 times in the heart, killing him. So next, I would like to, dive into the few themes and the few motifs that I noticed throughout the film. And since I do have a time constraint on YouTube, I went ahead and just narrowed it down to 3. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is the black and white theme. So pretty much what I mean by the black and white theme is just that our hero L is in the middle of a spectrum, a crime spectrum, if you will. On one end is going to be the black area, which is going to be the dark, gritty side, that's azul. On the other opposite end is going to be the light area, that's the more, white collar, I guess you could say the glorified version side of crime. And right in the middle is our main character, who dresses in a black coat, black pants, but with a white t-shirt. And so I think that his clothes, the black and the white, are supposed to represent the fact that he doesn't really fit in this new world, that he's just stuck in the middle, that he's just a victim of 2 warring factions, pretty much like he's standing in the middle of a tornado. And so I think that's why the director purposely dressed him in the color of the villain and the color of the other villain, because he's somewhere in the middle. He's the result of that clash. So, that's just one simple one that I noted. It's quite simple because it's thrown at our face the whole film. Another theme that I noted, which, I guess I kind of felt personally, was just the death of childhood. And what I mean by that is throughout the film, our main character, L, has a reoccurring dream of a young boy dressed in yellow playing with a basketball. And the little boy is obviously supposed to be, a symbol for L's, innocence. But at the same time, paired with this little boy is iconography of death, that relates to death. So what I mean by that is sometimes, in the first dream, the little boy's playing with the basketball, and the basketball literally turns into a severed head. You know what I mean? Pretty much implying the killing that L's gonna have to do throughout the film. He also the child is always also seen near or in a graveyard, which is, pretty on the nose, pretty somber. And at the same time, in that graveyard, he also sees his love interest covered in blood. So, that's pretty heavy stuff, And lastly, he always sees that child coming out of a building that looked like it was burned down many years ago. Pretty much implying that, his childhood that he's been holding on to, that naive need to be like his father and his grandfather, had ended a long time ago, but he just never let go. And I guess the dreams in general are just showing him things that he needs to let go of because they're dead. You know what I mean? Like his childhood is gone, so he can't keep holding on to that naive idea that, oh, I want to be like my ancestors. And, the fact that he sees his love interest in that dream too kind of makes sense, because that's something that's going to be taken away from him whether he likes it or not. Another, serious but kind of more silly theme that's in the film is pretty much technology versus talent. And so I feel like this theme was pretty much Robert Rodriguez's way of, showing that, because Robert Rodriguez is a musician. He makes most of the soundtracks for his film. So in this film, I guess what he was trying to say is that most people would prefer convenience over actual talent. And what I mean by that is that, there's a glaring example when L goes into a bar to try to find work. He tells the bartender, I don't really work for much. I only work for tips. So, just hire me. And the guy's like, why would I want one guitar player when I have the whole band? And so what this bartender thinks of the whole band is pretty much as a keyboard player sitting in the corner. And this keyboard player comes up and plays, he doesn't actually play music. He actually uses the preset songs that are on the keyboard and just taps the keyboard for sound effects. So it's pretty ridiculous. Just disappointedly kind of puts his head down because he knows that technology has replaced him. And so I feel like that's what Robert Rodriguez was trying to say. He was, if anything, I think he might have been trying to, throw a jab at the music industry at the time. Maybe talking about how, people prefer cookie cutter artists instead of actual talent. So those were the 3 themes that I felt resonated with me the most. I know there are way more, because this movie is dense. Robert Rodriguez is good at telling a story and having a dense story with, themes and hidden messages. And well, pretty much what I want to talk about next is how this movie personally spoke to me. So I live about 15 minutes away from the Mexican-American border. So, half my family lives in Mexico. So, as a child, I would constantly visit, my grandma's house, my aunt's house over there. And, it was fun. It was simple. Walk down the corner, get some, chips from the store. It was simple. And our visits kind of slowly dwindled off around 2008, when the violence between the gangs and, I guess the drug cartels in that area really, boiled over onto the streets. So, our family were constantly telling us, our family and also the Mexican media were pretty much telling us that every other week there was a shooting, or there was a bombing, or there was some sort of riot. And so this kind of, violence and stuff isn't new per se. It's actually been, I guess, something that's very, engraved in the Mexican culture, because, at first we had this foreign monarchy trying to push its will on the indigenous, population. Then later on there was, domestic dictators there in Mexico that were oppressing their own people. And now today they're, getting oppressed by money-hungry drug cartels. So, I see many parallels between the, quote-unquote over-the-top action in this movie to the real violence. Because a lot of people might look at this, never having really understood the way drug cartels are. Because, especially in 1992, talking about drug cartels and hitmen and all that stuff wasn't popular. There was no such thing as the film Sicario or pretty much all these movies that like glorify, drug cartels. The way they depict people just running around the streets and gunning each other down might seem a bit, over exaggerated to, a first world, viewer, someone that's lived their whole life in America. But that's not that weird, because in Mexico there are people just driving around with assault rifles, and people are gunned down in the middle of the street. It's just kind of the norm over there. It doesn't happen every day. It's not a giant war zone like some people like to make you believe, but it does happen. So I actually feel that there's a lot of realism that's depicted in this film. As this, the film series goes on, because there's actually 2 sequels after this movie, it gets more and more, ridiculous and more cartoony. But I think it kind of goes with those movies. But this first one, El Mariachi, I think is very realistic. And, it really hits me at a personal level, because I've had family members that have had, AK-47s pointed at their face. And I've had family members that have to live in the shadow of these gangs, and certain times when they're like, okay, everybody stay inside, we can't go out. They're out there driving around shooting up people. So it sucks, but there really is no solution to that problem. It's something that's kind of just engraved in, I guess, the systems of Mexico. Over there really isn't law and order. Most cops over there are either paid off or they're just crooked and they want to take your money from you. And this movie shows that. It shows bribery, and it shows how people in the background are just kind of going about their business with their heads down. What it really shows is that the only people that really have freedom in these poverty-stricken, crime-stricken places are the criminals themselves, because they can run around and do anything they want. The regular people are the ones that actually have to grind and work for the little bit that they get. So, in conclusion, it is clear that this film has a lot more to say than, hey, look at me, I was made for $7,000. There is a certain sadness to it. And, this really does show what violence does to the innocent. And, that can be said about all, 3 movies in the Mexico trilogy. And, for this film, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I could go on for hours and hours about this one film in particular. But the thing is, I can't. I don't have enough views on YouTube, I guess you could say. And, that's pretty much it. So if you like this video, you could go ahead and like and subscribe to the video. And, maybe comment in the comment section what kind of film you'd like me to talk about next. And hopefully that would enamor me to push out another video. Because, I'm new to this, barely getting started. So I would like any motivation to go forward. Any ideas in the comments are really good. And, any way I can improve my setup is better. Right now, I'm just using natural light. I bought an LED pack, and dumb me, I forgot to buy the batteries. Any suggestions are great. And, thank you for watching. If you sat through all of that, I really appreciate it. And hopefully, I'll have something more for you to watch in the future. Thank you.